Fake news is all over the internet, whether you're going to a news source, whether you're going to social media, there's a lot of it on social media, or you're going through scientific papers, there's fake news, misinterpreted information, corrections that need to be made, and just stuff that's shared online that's just factually completely incorrect and poop. That's definitely a technical term. So as smart, sciencey people, how do we find reliable sources or trustworthy information that we can use to educate ourselves, understand certain rationales, justify our philosophies of practice, and get a rough idea, knowledge-based belief around what it is that we're doing day to day to stay healthy, to stay vibrant, and live life to the fullest? As much as I hate to say it, there isn't really an answer because it depends and context matters, of course, with science, and I'm going to continue this conversation that Medlife Crisis actually started at the beginning of this year, which Veritasium sort of contributed to way beforehand. So if you haven't watched those videos, I'll leave a link in the description below. And the main point from the video from Medlife Crisis was about free knowledge. How do we get free knowledge? Should knowledge be free? And some of the issues surrounding Scihub as a platform that goes against and sort of battles with some of these journal articles that have issues with sharing knowledge online for free. £30 for an article is quite expensive, especially when it's like 8 or 9 pages, 3 of those pages being references, and I'm not in an academic institution. I'm not doing a degree at the moment, so paying for all of those articles is just impossible. I wouldn't be able to financially research anything. And from the video Medlife Crisis did, he actually outlines some of the arguments that journals have for charging for all of these things, which essentially come down to peer review, which we can get online anyway, and then the ability to track metrics, which Medlife Crisis actually made a really good point and said, YouTube, you can do it on YouTube. Now, my issue with YouTube and doing science on YouTube, again, comes down to it's just one person saying the thing. Now, in journal articles, there are collaborative pieces, there are collaborative work, which YouTube you can do, takes more effort, more time, but in the spirit of good science, maybe that is a route that people should take. However, in YouTube, you can't really put references or citations for whatever you've said. You can't say 1 minute, 1 second, this reference and this reference, 1 minute, 4 seconds, this reference. Otherwise, the page would just be loads of references all over the place, which is why I think YouTube videos are great for discussions, continuing conversations, and maybe doing summaries with a couple of meta-analysis in the description. But the main writing needs to be writing. So tracking metrics of pieces of information through studies can be done through a platform like YouTube just for articles, open access, but at the moment you're having to pay for open access. ResearchGate is great, Google Scholar is great. There are so many different places to find information, find articles that can grab metrics if it's just allowed. However, if and when we do get that open access to all of those papers, or now when you're accessing those papers, again, it's the same as YouTube or social media or fake news as it is right now on the internet. There is just one story, there's one narrative in that paper, then you have to read the next one, then the next one, then the next one to get a summary of what is going on, or you need to be following that field. So for people that aren't following the field, that don't really care about all of the nuance and just want an overview, where do you go and find that? Well, you'd need to find a researcher, someone you trust, either go to their YouTube channel, go to their personal blog, and again, you're navigating around the internet trying to laterally read and find what is going on. Now, bringing in the peer review argument of all this science and this research is great, but there's an interesting conversation to be had when it comes to publishing papers, because there are still mistakes, there are still errors, and there's still lots of corrections and just flat out incorrect science that's being published, and sometimes it stays up for a long period of time. Research Watch trying to keep track of everything that's going on, but some papers are up for 10, 12, 15 years with just false information that are cited and go forwards, and Veritasium in his video did actually say that it's not just in social science. There are elements of p-hacking, which is what he talks about, in physics as well, in the natural sciences, where there should be somewhat fact-based information that is being shared. For those unfamiliar with p-hacking, essentially researchers try and find a significant difference. They bias the study, they do lots of different metrics and just say, yep, there's a significant difference, it's good to publish, we'll publish that, and they don't carry on the research, or they've found a really small, nuanced, niche, specific case where something is true. Now, that one specific case may be down to loads of different laboratory factors that would never really happen in real life. It's just the conditions that the research has been put under. Having said that, not all p-hacking is deliberate. How do we then fight against some of this p-hacking and this peer-reviewed research that still seems to have loads of mistakes in? Well, there's repetitive studies, so you can reproduce the study and see, does this happen again? Does this happen again? But journal articles don't typically publish those studies. They are changing, which has been a discussion in the science literature research field, and the same can be said for negative results. Journal articles typically don't publish negative results to something. Just because you haven't found something is actually significant. There is no result when you see this, or we've done this study and there was no significant difference. The no significant different thing is actually important. When there's a negative result, it means that this thing isn't true. So it still needs to be part of the evidence base, in my opinion. So how do we get a summary of a field of research when science isn't being shared that's negative results? Science is also being slightly biased towards p-hacking and trying to find significant results with constraints that are really unrealistic. And how then do we fight against all of these things that are being found in practical environments, the practical environment of whatever it is, whether that's medicine, science, my field of sports coaching, strength and conditioning, health sciences, all of those elements and areas that just can't really do loads and loads of research because it's so diverse in the way the science works. This is where social media, blogs, articles, news, and the combination of theory and practice comes together, like podcasts and lots of different places where practitioners and academics are combining the conversation and building something that's there. But the problem then becomes what we have right now, which is, okay, which podcast do I listen to? Which summary do I listen to? There are 20, 30, 50, 100 different podcasts you could listen to that try and summarize this narrative. This one narrative has been summarized by 50 different people on podcasts. Then you have 100 and 150 different videos on this thing. How do you try and get all of that into one summary? Well, you have to consume it all. We don't have time to consume it all. Trust me, I keep trying. It's just not possible. As a recent example of all of this from my research into my field of sports coaching, the relative age effect is an effect in social science, also in psychology, where essentially if you're born earlier in the academic or sporting year, you are given an advantage because of social effects. Go look at the Wikipedia page that I have done about that. But when I first went to that Wikipedia page, it was quite bare. There wasn't much information on there, but normally Wikipedia is great for articles if the article is written very well. Now, smack my mic. So I decided, let's go into the books. And what did the books do? Reference the articles. What did the article do? Reference the books. And they all do the same thing. Now, because of the way journals accept articles, the majority, like the vast majority of relative age effect articles are people saying the relative age effect appears in this sport, at this age group, with this gender, with this context. Great. We know the relative age effect is a thing. We don't need more research on it. But because they're finding significant differences, it's being published. Now, how do we move that conversation on? Well, we can't really move that conversation on until people try and understand what's actually going on with this effect. Now, there have been studies that try and predict or try and guess some of the effects because it's social science. Therefore, for my summary of the relative age effect, I had to go into the books, go into podcasts, go into some of the authors' Twitter feeds, go into some of their own personal blogs to try and find the links that they have made between completely separate research and the relative age effect to get a cohesive summary of what's going on. Now, all of that took a lot of time on my part out of personal curiosity and because I wanted to share that information. Now, I could have shared that information in an article, but it would have taken ages for me to actually publish. It would have taken a lot of research and I would need to have done loads of other work. Potentially it'd come out like a year, maybe 2 years, because I'm not publishing articles, or I put it on a personal blog. But if I put it on a personal blog, we're stuck with the same issue. Okay, this is a personal blog. This is another narrative I could read. So how do you try and bring all of these narratives together and have a conversation, a global conversation about this one topic area? And I've been at this point for a while. How do we share scientific information with a global conversation around the topic so we can use experts from all fields because we don't all know everything about a topic. Most fields have various experts talking about certain narratives, certain contexts of an effect of something that has happened. But how do we get all of those people talking and having conversations about the same thing? Well, I think we need to go outside of citations and sources to get a summary because a summary is going to be a narrative. A narrative is going to have opinions. They're going to have different levels of belief, so you can't really cite it. Therefore, the summary article needs to be not in traditional science. It certainly needs to reference studies and traditional science from either open source research or anywhere else that's currently available, but the summary needs to have various narratives in because it needs to be more of a conversation rather than a this is a fact, this is a fact, this is a fact, because absolute truth is very difficult to come by, especially in the world that we're living in with the nuances that we have with how we deal with health sciences, medicine, and all of the other areas of science. Now, Medlife Crisis mentioned in his video Wikipedia just as Wikipedia is a thing, and And I just shrugged it off just like he did and just like most people have done, but Wikipedia is actually a really useful place, personally, for research when you go down into the citations. But when you start thinking about it, actually, if scientists start writing articles, start summarizing their articles all in the same place and having conversations in the same place, rather than in paper after paper after paper after paper, anyone can see that conversation, which is what I've started doing. I've started sharing my information instead of on my own personal blog, which people have to go and find. I share it through Wikipedia, and what I actually found, for those of you that have been following the channel, the Feynman technique. I went into the Feynman technique and had a look, and I was having conversations with other Wikipedia editors around the Feynman technique, and you can have a look at the video. It's not great, so we just got rid of the article and moved it somewhere else. And the same can be said for any area of science. You can have that conversation with editors on the page, off the page, personal pages, so user pages in Wikipedia, and something that most people, I certainly didn't know this about Wikipedia, but there are backlinks. Wikipedia has backlinks, so you can go into Wikipedia backlinks of an article and see what user is currently backlinking to the page. Maybe they're working on a draft, so you could have a look at the drafts, or maybe look at articles that have referenced that page or that article, whatever's going on. There are stats around all of the articles, how many people have edited the article history, how many people share the article. There are so many stats on Wikipedia as well, all to do with that article. Then obviously you can cite papers. You can have as many citations as you want. Then when it comes to editing, if it is a page that needs to be protected, then you can protect it. You can only have certain people editing that page because of the protection that's been put on. When there are edit battles that goes on, you can have that conversation and see what's going on. Maybe the answer is to share both points of view of whatever it is that's going on in the article, but that way, instead of having to find 3 meta-analyses that go through everything through 100 pages, you can have those meta-analyses down the bottom, but you can have summaries of whatever it is, essentially the abstracts, in one article. It just makes life so much easier for me anyway, as someone researching, and for someone that's going to look at the information that isn't in academics, like myself, that isn't like with an institution. They can just look at the Wikipedia article and find everything they need to know. Now, I'm talking about Wikipedia because you can edit on your phone, on your iPad, on your PC, you can look at other people's pages, you can edit anywhere on Wikipedia. There are loads of stats, there's loads of benefits, but it could be another website where lots of people can collaborate. But from my experience, I haven't found another website that, 1, is as popular as Wikipedia, 2, functions as well as Wikipedia, and 3, allows so much of the flexibility that Wikipedia gives. Now, is Wikipedia a source for academic citation? No, because it's a narrative of lots of different people talking about something, and it's not a study, but you can use it to start the citations list for research, which is what its benefit is. It's a conversation, it's a summary of research, which is what I think YouTube videos are trying to do. So the way I see it is that Wikipedia is a very nice partner with YouTube videos. YouTube videos being a personal narrative of whatever it is that's going on, or a blog, maybe a blog being a personal narrative, and then Wikipedia being a collaborative narrative around whatever the topic is, whatever the science is, and then using the research papers, the hopefully open access papers, to justify whatever it is being said. Now that my super enthusiastic rant is over, I will let you do your own research, and you can explore the links in the description below.